Diana?
Give it a half second. Yeah,
Sure.
there we go.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Healthy Habits for Productive Writers. Habits take thought and care to cultivate, but it's, these little things that we do every day or most days that are actually responsible for our ability to meet our goals in writing and in life. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves with your name, your favorite time to write, and like a little snapshot of how your personal writing habit has evolved over time. Start with Dan, then Michael, then Diana.
Hi, I'm Dan Fitzgerald. I write adult fantasy, and my writing has evolved quite a bit. When I was when I had my kids were born 13 years ago, I was writing in 5 to 10 minute snippets whenever I could get away from them, maybe 15 when they were in the bath. But over time, I was able to break a little bit more. I have twins, so it's a little bit crazy.
Oh, wow.
Break away a little bit more time. But in recent times, especially in the last couple of years, I've really found a rhythm where I write every evening after the kids go to bed, after everybody's in bed while the dishwasher's running. And I've sort of set a goal of 500 words a night, which seemed arbitrary at first, but it turns out to work out well. And on the weekends, I get another 500 in the morning. That's when I'm not editing, which I'm doing right now. But essentially having that block of time every night. And at first it was hard to, squeeze out the 500 words. But what I found over time is that my brain became accustomed to the habit. And so when the time came, it was a Pavlovian response almost, like the words were just ready to go.
Excellent. And Michael?
Morning, everyone. My name is Mike Edmonds. I go by MJ on my writing and on social media. I do mostly fantasy, but I also dabble in horror and self-help. And the way my writing has evolved over time has gone from when I was young and it was all self-inserts, which I think we all do when we start, to more dynamic characters and storytelling. And for me, part of why that happened is just, Dan, you said it good too, finding a little bit of time every day, regardless of what you can get done. And that's just it. I'll write before I go to work in the morning if I'm up early enough, but it's mostly in the evenings. And I very much prefer a nice session in the Saturday or Sunday mornings.
Excellent. So weekend writer there. And Diana?
I'm Diana Gunn, creator of the Weeknight Writers Group, fantasy author, and freelance writer by day, which means that so this year I actually had a major influx of freelance work, actually, and that has kind of derailed my usual fiction writing routine, because when you've written 2,000 words for a client, at the end of the day, you kind of don't have words after. So right now I'm sort of resettling that. I do try to get in just a couple of sentences or paragraphs every day when I finish my work writing. But what I'm really trying to do now is to set aside at least one full day for writing every week, for fiction writing, I should say, every week. Because yeah, after a day of actually working with words, I often don't have energy to then turn to my own words afterward.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's sometimes difficult to balance if you have the job and the side projects as well.
Can I add something to what she just said?
Please.
So she said, I've sometimes tried to get, just a sentence or a paragraph. And I find that for me, when I was starting to develop my nighttime routine, originally it was just, I need to get a sentence, just get a sentence in. I don't care if I'm feeling inspired or not. Surely I can do one sentence. And usually once you do one sentence, your brain gets going and you could do more. So if you can't set a goal of 500 or 1,000 or 3,000 words, maybe just try a sentence, and that start will help you, get moving.
Okay, well, let's talk about goal setting then for a second. So what goals do you have in your writing routines, and maybe how have those changed or improved as you've improved your writing and just been writing for a longer time? Let's do Michael, then Dan, then Diana this time. Michael?
I always set a goal of finishing a scene. That's what's important to me, because as I go through my day, I'm thinking of the next scene or a scene I want to get written. So that's always my short-term goal. Like, again, I love what Dan's saying over here, because once you start, it's harder to stop, and that's great. And that's exactly what has changed for me over the course of my life. Is when I was younger, I'd think about it all day and I would mentally exhaust myself. And then I'd come home, it's like, I've already planned the movie and the anime adaptation and all this stuff, so I'm done. Now I'm actually able to put it down and keep going. And that's a habit that develops again over time.
Good. Diana.
Sorry, my brain just went.
That's all good.
Well, my goals in terms of my writing routine, I mean, again, it was all kind of upended this year because circumstances changed. I had a bunch more freelance work, and also my partner had a bunch less work, so I had to take on all that freelance work. So I don't have the same balance that I usually have, which means right now it's really just get something done every day. I've always been more of an evening writer. I'm really like locked into that from, all those years in school where I would come home from school, have a snack, and then do my writing. So it's really weird to try to slot writing in earlier during the day, but I've sort of been trying to do that, and I'm trying to have at least something every day and then one big writing day a week.
Okay. So do you want to say anything else about how you've been sort of in the process of readapting your routine and what that's meant for you and your writing?
I'm still figuring that out. It's a work in progress. 2020 has been a year.
For sure. Definitely has been. Dan or Michael, then how have you moved your writing around your life?
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I guess I would say that I have twins, and obviously I'm a teacher, so lots of work like anybody else, and really just breaking apart those times. So like Saturday and Sunday morning when the kids are watching cartoons, that's my time. I go down into the unfinished basement and get out the laptop and go to work. And the same thing is true for the evening. So my day, there's no writing happening during the day between, 9 and, 10 at night, 9 in the morning and 10 at night. So I have to carve out those little times when I can find them.
Yeah, make use of every minute. How about you, Michael?
Well, I have a regular day job, and there are times where I write during my lunch because I'm working on a computer. I work in an office, so I have that little bit of access to tech. But I have a 10-year-old son, so I have him part of the week. When he's with me, I spend more time with him. So again, it is finding that little bit of time. I've done freelance work too, so I understand exactly how you feel, Diane. It's boom, gone. But yeah, no, it's carving out those minutes. It's getting a few here, and anytime's a good time.
Okay. Well, we know that the muses are not always commandable, but the best creative minds tell us that it's important to feed our inspiration. That is, make time to read or watch or listen to or participate in activities that create space, that spark the ideas and let your creative side breathe. So what are some ways that you cultivate inspiration in your own writing life? Who wants to go first? Okay. Michael, then Dan, then Diana.
All right. I found over the years that when it comes to generating the inspiration, video games don't do it for me like they used to. Sometimes the music's really good. I still get onto that. But what works better for me is watch stuff. I'm working on a new project, and I went and watched a bunch of classic samurai films, Seven Samurai and Yojimbo, and it's like it's the first time I've actually sat down and watched them, and it's like, this is storytelling at its purest, and it really helps to drive. So film, any sort of action related thing works the best for me. I'm got a little bit of vision problems, but I can see some Ruby stuff on the back shelf of someone's, and that's already reminded me how far behind I am on that show.
Better get caught up. New season comes out November 7th.
Yeah, you see, but Ruby's a great little source of inspiration. It's a great show. But that's a good example of things that work for me. And reading doesn't do as much for me, interestingly enough. It teaches me more technique than inspiring my own creativity. That's not to say that it's not always the case. The Witcher series was a big influence on me developing my adult writing habits, as well as Vampire Hunter D, which is a Japanese series that's been translated. And of course, I'm a fan of some classic literature, Dante Alighieri, so everyone loves the Inferno. But yeah, it's mostly visual media that inspires me the most.
Interesting. Dan?
I would say for me, I'm similar to MJ in the sense that although I read and I get a lot out of the reading, I don't think that inspires me specifically. For me, the biggest inspiration is getting away from media. So, taking walks, particularly I like to take a walk in the woods, and just getting away from all sorts of screens sort of creates that mental space. And I feel like we tend to spend so much time consuming some form of media, whether it's music or TV or a movie or a book or social media or an incredible Zoom panel. But sometimes we just need to not have media in our faces. So like, doing yoga is another thing. I don't say that I'd necessarily get ideas specifically from it, but that's a time when I'm not consuming any media. My mind is free to kind of, float. And I think those times are important. And also sometimes I'll watch a, kind of vapid TV show. And it doesn't give me inspiration, but actually somehow the formulaic structure of the show allows my mind to relax. And all of a sudden, holy crap, there's my next trilogy. Like, I just got this great idea. So I pull out the phone and like type it down. Like literally an entire trilogy came to me while I was watching, I don't even know what. And the TV show was just a background for my brain to process.
I have a couple TV shows like that. Criminal Minds and Bones come to mind immediately. Just watched endless reruns of Bones while I'm writing.
Yes, endless reruns. I miss Bones. I have not watched that in a while since they took it off Netflix. Jerks.
No.
Jerks.
My heart.
So for me, there's really two aspects to this. I consider when I'm just, consuming media to relax, I still consider that an important part of my creative process. That downtime is really important, and I'm still immersed in story. I do play a fair chunk of video games. I just finished a replay of Dragon Age Inquisition.
Always good.
Is badass. Some video games do actually inspire me in terms of, not necessarily in terms of story, but in terms of world building elements. I found Horizon Zero Dawn particularly got that part of my brain working.
Great game.
Yep.
Phenomenal game.
Worked for me too.
I do watch a fair bit of TV, but mostly that doesn't give me ideas. It's very interesting. I actually tend to watch mostly sci-fi TV, and I don't really read a lot of sci-fi, and I don't really play sci-fi games, but I watch almost exclusively sci-fi TV. I don't know. So that doesn't usually give me like direct inspiration, but it all feeds into each other, right? And yeah, reading books, but like I said, usually what it gives me inspiration for really is world building details. My stories are stories that have lived in my head and in my soul for a really long time that I'm just slowly fleshing out at this point. I don't have anything that's even as new as like 7 years ago. All of my ideas that I'm working with are at least 10 years old.
That's fair. I personally like to listen to podcasts as well. just to get some stuff going in my brain. But so along with our inspiration, we generally also need to take care of our mental and emotional and physical health, because if we don't, feed those aspects, it's kind of hard to put words on the page. So why don't you guys let me know what non-writing habit most affects your own personal productivity? Like if you don't do this thing, it's almost impossible to write. Diana, you want to start us off this time?
I really feel like saying caffeine.
It's an acceptable answer.
I don't know what you're talking about.
See?
Just say yes to drugs.
Oh, now, kids.
I mean,
Hey.
caffeine.
I have very important drugs. The doctor prescribed them. They're required for my operation.
Important things.
For
Important
the
things.
day-to-day operation of the Diana. Some drugs are required. Really, though, specifically about caffeine, what I did 2 years ago, I did a 3-week caffeine detox because my doctor was worried. I got some lectures because I was just drinking like 8 cups of tea a day.
I drink at least 8 cups of tea a day. Should I be concerned?
Those are rookie numbers.
I don't know. I guess it depends on the strength of your tea. I'm not sure. But anyway, so I took a 3-week break from caffeine, which was incredibly difficult. But now I need like maybe 2 or 3 cups to get me through a day. And that has actually made a huge difference. I'm drinking way less, tea. I'm going to the bathroom way less often.
Must be a benefit.
The caffeine is more effective in general, so like my first cup matters more. Today, for some reason, not so much. I'm like most of the way through my first cup and it's done nothing. But most days, caffeine has a much larger effect on me since, I did take that break. And I do think that that's important to like reassess our relationships with caffeine. I understand that most of us need it. But yeah, taking that time to detox off of it basically gave me a whole new like leash on life with caffeine. And yeah.
Oh, sometimes it's really good to evaluate our habits and decide if they're still working or not, or if we just need a break from them for a moment.
Exactly.
How about you, Dan?
Well, I mentioned before yoga, so I got into yoga about 1.5 years ago. Having never done it before, I realized basically I was out of shape and I hadn't really been doing any exercise except for a little bit of walking. So I was like, well, let's give it a try. And so I do like a class on Mondays, 1.5-hour class, and then I do a 30-minute sort of routine at home, 3, 4, 5 times a week. And having that time I mentioned is very good, and particularly since in writing, you tend to be hunched over a screen, you're sitting in a chair, your body's not moving, your hands are in the same position all the time. And finding a way to, whether it's yoga or some sport or whatever, weightlifting, so finding a way to use your hands in a way that is strenuous is very important, just to be able to have the physical stamina to write. And also, for your back and your neck, half the time you're sitting there, when you're not writing, you're looking down at your phone and your hand is gripped around it. So finding a way to get the hands stretched and exercised is really important. And also, I take a lot of like 10, 15-minute walks. So just to get out of the house, get some air, and again, get away from all the media. And I think that there's a physical aspect is really important, but there's also a mental aspect to some form of exercise, and everybody's ability to exercise is different. But to me, if I didn't do those things, then at the end of the day, I would just feel, clenched, and I feel like it would make it harder to write. And on the days when I haven't done anything, I definitely feel wrong.
Well, they do say you're not supposed to do like any one thing for longer than 20 minutes without sort of a stand up and a break. So that makes a lot of sense.
I also write standing up rather than sitting down most of the time in the kitchen.
Oh, that's cool.
Can I ask one question? How do
Of
you feel
course.
about Zoom yoga classes? Because I've tried this whole Zoom exercise class and I hate it.
It's been great for me because I have the same teacher and the same other students that I was with in person. It is a little bit weird trying to do Om together at the end through Zoom, but it works okay for me. But again, I think if you were doing it for the first time, like I know the teacher really well, I know the other students. So it's like I'm staying with the community that I had before. So that sense of connection is important. But I could see how joining it with some strangers would not have the same effect.
Effect. How about you, Michael?
Al, since I'm big into self-help and growth and development, some of the most important things that I believe is just a simple routine. Get up in the morning, make your bed, have a glass of water, do a little bit of light exercise to get the blood flowing, and one of the most important things is some level of meditation. It's only for a couple of minutes, and doesn't have to be of a spiritual nature. I use the similar meditation techniques that business gurus and our millionaires and stuff have been using for years, which is to focus on my day and set my mind for the tasks that are at hand. So whether that's going to be getting through the next chapter, working on the editing, maybe finally sitting down and fixing that cover that's been off center for the last 6 months, something like that. But these are very, very important routines, and they help to develop discipline, and they help to develop just a sense of you're in control of yourself. I'm constantly being told you need to do cold showers. Listen, I'm not going to do cold showers, but I will say this. After a long day, if you need some time to just relax and think, you can go with a shower. I don't care. I'm 33 years old. I will fill up the bathtub and I will take a hot bath and just sit there and think. But I do like walks too, Dan.
You mentioning the cold showers reminds me of a really good technique I learned for waking yourself up on a hard day before caffeine. Just right before you get out of the shower, turn it to cold for like 5 seconds and just have that cold attack and you're like, oh, I'm awake now. Do not recommend on most days, but if you really need to get going, it works.
It'll get you out of the shower, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, okay. So it sounds like you guys are setting good goals, sort of even during your other habits of your meditation or your walks or whatever you do to give yourself breathing space. How do you evaluate sort of what's working, what's not, and how do you sort of decide to make a change? How does that happen for you? Who wants to start this time? Michael?
Sure. A lot of people believe that when you start something, you need to work on it straight through to the end. And sometimes understanding that not everything's going to work is a big component of success. So the way I tell something's not working is if it's not bearing any sort of fruit, whether I'm not keeping up with it or there's no interest, and then that tells me my technique is wrong. A good example would be how I'm advertising. Am I just advertising through Twitter? Am I not going with ads? Am I not connecting with enough people? If I have a website, which I do, and it's got a little bit of everything on it, and I'm not generating traffic, should I give up on it because I'm not getting what I want out of it? But rather than worrying about cutting something off that has potential, it's about reevaluating. And sometimes it just doesn't work. When it comes to writing, you can usually tell if you've got a character and you're halfway through and you're like, I don't get it. I created a character that was supposed to be naive about the world, and then halfway through, the character revealed that she was just playing the part. And I'm like, wait, did I do this the whole time? I go back and I'm like, oh, okay, it still works. But that's a key. If something's not working, evolve it.
Okay. How about you, Dan?
I don't have a great answer to this question, but I would say that if I'm not getting pleasure out of something, or if it's not feeling, fulfilling, then that's kind of how I know something is not working. I've noticed that since I started my routine and sort of general goal setting, my writing has been working a lot better, and the routine sort of helps everything else work pretty smoothly. So for me, as long as I'm in a routine, things tend to do well. And occasionally I'll introduce a new aspect to the routine and I have to drop something else or cut back a little bit. Like I started Instagram because my publisher was like, "You must be on Instagram." And I was like, "No." But actually it turns out to be great. Like I love taking photos. So I've just integrated that into my walks. I'm taking walks and occasionally like, "Oh wow, that's amazing. Let's take a photo of this." Anyway, so I don't have a great answer, but I do think if you're not getting joy from it, not to get all Mary Kondo about it, but that's probably a good indication that it's time to cut it.
That's fair. Marie Kondo, all I'm thinking of now is you have too many books and why I don't like that meme.
There's no such thing as
There's no such thing as too many
I
books.
know,
only
exactly.
too little shelf space.
I ran out a while ago.
To be fair, in Japan they have very limited shelf space, so I can understand that they have a different concept of too many books.
They have very little space.
Yes. That's the thing. When your apartment is like 200 square feet, only having
It's like the
20
size
books
of my
makes
dining
sense.
room.
Yeah. So I have two answers. I have the answer that I give to everyone else as a suggestion for them, which is I highly, highly recommend reading the book DIY MFA by Gabriela Pereira. It really gives you a detailed process that you can use to fine-tune your writing routine, and you can also apply that to other things, but it's specifically around your writing routine. And the thing that I love about DIY MFA versus other writing books is that it's really about making writing work for you, making it work around your life, making it work with your personality, rather than slotting you into Gabriela's writing process. So highly, highly recommend DIY MFA. It's great. Gabriela's great. I've interviewed her a couple times. She's a lovely lady. You want to support her. Personally, I do a lot of journaling on paper. I do, instead of the concept of morning pages, because I'm not really much of a morning person, this is like the earliest I do anything. I do evening pages, which is most nights at the end of the day, I sit down and I free write usually 3 to 4 pages. And I will start with, this is what I did today and this is how it went. And usually, like, that will, I'm almost always working on some aspect of my routine. So usually that is like an automatic daily evaluation of how the new process is working or not working, as the case may be. And then I can look at that and, after a month or two go, okay, no, this is not working. I've been journaling about how bad this is for 3 weeks. It's done. Bye.
That's a great way to do it.
Jade, can I ask you a real quick question?
Of course.
Are you drinking out of a really giant coffee cup, or does it just look that way from the perspective of when you lift it?
It's
It
a
looks
really
like-
giant tea mug.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
it's
checking.
massive.
Amazing.
Yeah, I can't do anything in the morning without tea. I think, Dan, did you want to revisit the goal setting for a moment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so ever since I started the 500 words routine, I started thinking, I've also started thinking ever since, so I was signed to finish a trilogy. I'd written 2.5 books of it, signed for the trilogy in March, and all of a sudden everything kind of got like ramped up. So because the idea is they're going to publish the first book in September, the second in October, or sorry, second in December, and the third in next March. And so I had to which is good. I mean, they were all, one was drafted and heavily edited. The second was drafted and edited a few times. And the third one was almost done. but I had to really think, about the medium-term goals, which also got me thinking about long-term goals. So the medium-term goals, obviously, I need to make sure I get these books finished and edited, and through several rounds of editing and sensitivity reader for one of them. But I started doing some math. So let's say, how many books do I want to publish a year, like on average, over the course of my writing career? And what do I need to do to get there? So rather than saying like, this is where I am now and you're all closed in this space, so I was like, ideally I would love to be able to do like 2 books a year. I don't know, like, let's see if that's feasible. So my books tend to be about 90,000 words, so on the shorter side for fantasy. So how many words is that, a day? And assuming that there are going to be some days that I write and some days that I edit. So ultimately, the goal has to be to get, if I get 500 words a day on average over the course of a year, let's see, doing the math, that's 2 books a year. And so there are going to be some times when I'm editing and not writing at all, and then sometimes that I'm getting more than that. Like in the summer, I'm a teacher, so I'll get 1,000 words a day in the summer and on the weekends. So anyway, so it is technically doable, and assuming that's, I want to keep that long-term goal in mind, it helps me to set the shorter-term goals. And also having that 500-word goal a day helps me, because there are times when I certainly could write more, but I feel like if you write to the end of your creative strength until you're creatively exhausted, it's not always a good thing. Whereas if you write, a certain amount, then you're like, okay, I'm going to take a break now. I'm going to do something else, go to bed, read a book. Then the next day when you get up, it's juiced and ready to go, as opposed to if you do these marathon sessions, which certainly work for some people. I see people on Twitter saying, I got 6,500 words a day. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, how do you write 6,500 words in one day?
That would burn me out for sure.
Right. So anyway, to me, it's all about setting a goal that's doable and that it doesn't exceed my creative capacity, because if I go too far, it just messes up my next day, etc.
I believe that was also a Hemingway method, if I remember.
He said to leave yourself, I think he said to leave yourself even mid-sentence so that you know what you're coming back to or something, or you're enthusiastic.
He's a bit radical.
Yeah, the mid-sentence thing is a bit much for me, but
No,
I
I'm too
definitely
compulsive.
see
I can't do that.
Well, I see
no
a
way. I
see a
can't just
question
leave
here.
a sentence hanging. I mean, unless I get completely distracted by something mid-sentence, like, the cat pukes or something, and then it's out the window anyway, I'm probably going to have to restart the sentence. But I can't just leave a sentence unfinished. A paragraph, yes. A sentence, no. That bothers me.
The editor in me is bothered by the idea.
Right.
Can I jump in on the question that someone asked?
Please do.
So the question is, but like, don't you ever just wear yourself out like that? I mean, part of the reason that I've stuck with the 500-word goal is because it doesn't wear me out. Like, I can do 500 words, even pretty decent words, in a half an hour most days. But also there are times when I'm like, right now I'm not writing at all, I'm just editing, and I'm actually desperate to write again. And so you sort of build up that strength. But just when my goal is to get in a routine where I'm writing for a certain period, and just when I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore, edits come back from publisher, and I'm in editing mode. So keeping, as long as I'm averaging 500 words a day over the course of the year, it doesn't mean I'm writing 500 words every single day. In fact, some days I'm writing 1,000, and like for the last 3-4 weeks, I haven't written a single word because I've been editing like a beast, which is its own kind of exhausting. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to be so hungry to get back to the new book.
Awesome. So let's touch on interruptions for a moment. So routines are all great, but how do you deal with an interruption to your routine, especially one that you weren't planning for? I know some of us might be thinking of COVID, but maybe also things like you get pregnant and have a baby, or your health problems, anything that kind of interrupts your routine. And then how do you sort of find your groove again? Who wants to start this time?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
So this week I had some fun health problems. So I have recent experience with this.
Awesome.
So a lot of it really is just about forgiveness and acceptance. The reality is, it depends on the kind of distraction. If the distraction is the cat pukes once, it only takes a few minutes to clean that up. And if I'm still in the mood to write, I can usually just get back to it. if the distraction is, you know, a serious problem with my health and I have to go to emerge and I have an anxiety attack, I just acknowledge I'm not going to write that day and I'm probably going to be too wiped to write for a day or two afterward as well. And I have to acknowledge that and be kind to myself and forgiving of myself that I have to take that time, because the fact is, if I don't take that time when I'm having the issue initially, it's going to get way worse and I'm going to have to take much more time later on. And so I just remind myself that I'm, you know, taking this short period of time off now to not have to take a much longer period of time off later.
Reminds me of why we're wearing masks.
Yes, exactly. Oh my
Uh,
God, I saw a lady wearing a mask on just her nose.
Really?
Over her nose, like a Band-Aid almost. And
That's okay. I've seen
this
someone wearing a
tiny-
purse on the bus.
I would have yelled, but she was this tiny old lady with a walker, and I didn't have the heart, but inside I was cringing so hard. Please, please wear your mask over both of your face holes. All your face holes should be covered by your mask. Please and thank you. PSA.
Indeed. Wear your masks, people.
Wear them properly.
Yes. Wear
Not
them
as chin
properly.
straps or nose straps or...
Thank you for coming for my TED Talk.
Yes.
Michael.
For me, I just shift my schedule around. If it's a minor interruption, I stay late at work. I stay home because I'm not feeling well. If it's something a little bit more serious, now I'm actually on the panel this afternoon for Writing with Depression. I'll touch on that more during that one. But I like what you said, Diana, about forgiveness. And that's a big part of understanding some days you just don't. But for me, this is always working. I've always got some kind of idea and planning in the works. And I journal too. I keep it with me. So I'm able to kind of keep track of that. Anything super dramatic that comes in, again, I can shift it. I stayed up way too late the other night with some friends of mine. I don't normally do that. So that was my night, and then I slept in yesterday. So, but that's not something bad. That's not a bad interruption. If my son wants to do something, it's not a bad interruption. And that's about it. It's just finding a way to adjust.
Yeah, adjustments can be tricky, but consistently have to keep reevaluating things and moving forward.
Yeah.
The world doesn't stop.
I should also note that, you know, this is what I say about interruptions now as a person who lives with just my partner, who is a loving partner, who is accepting and also understanding of my writing time. So I don't have to deal with interruptions on that front. And that's a very different kind of interruption to deal with. I'm sure Dan can talk about family interrupting you a bit more.
Yeah, please.
Well, I mean, first of all, the question of how do I deal with interruptions in my writing routine, the answer would be very badly. It's the whole reason I created a routine is that I can, like, my wife can sit on the couch and read a book while the kids are swarming around and making all sorts of ruckus. And I cannot read or write or do anything else in that circumstance. So that's why I evolved my routine. You know, they're upstairs watching TV in the morning on Saturday. I'm downstairs in the basement, and all I can hear is the sound of my son's feet as he jumps up and down with excitement. But there are times when, you know, someone mentioned, do you wear yourself, or days when I just can't do it. And Diana mentioned forgiveness is a really good thing. And if you build in, you know, you're thinking about a medium and a long-term schedule. So my 2 books a year, 500 words a day schedule includes some lag time. Like if I do the math fully in terms of how much time I spend editing, how much time I spend writing, you know, there's still extra time built into the year. And of course, this is just a goal. So I don't meet the goal. It's okay. But, you know, try to set goals where you give yourself, you know, 20% cushion so that if you don't meet the goal all the time, you don't even have to feel bad or forgive yourself because you've already built in the cushion.
Yeah. I think the best routines definitely have some flexibility around them to allow for that. And also, we tend to start using things like apps or tools, or even just like, I have like this grid in my notebook sometimes that I use to organize myself. What do you guys have that kind of gives you a shortcut or a way to organize something that would save you time in your habit or your routine? Michael, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, sure. I always hated the idea of them when I was a kid, but outlines are your friend. And
Please tell us about outlines.
outlines are your friend. When it comes to writing, if you're working on a big project, you need something. I have what I like to refer to as the cover spread because I'm silly like that, and I like to take words from other things. And what I do is, you're not going to really be able to make it out because I got water on this notebook. Is I take the first page of a legal pad and I put all the most important information: my setting, my tone.
I've heard of this method.
See, I knew I wasn't alone, but I'm going to claim all credibility for it.
Oh, you probably have a different method. I've just heard the whole one page of a legal pad before.
It works wonderful because at no time am I flipping through looking for what's the point of this scene. Well, that's easy. If I'm writing an urban fantasy, well, my setting is urban. My setting is urban fantasy. If my tone is supposed to be dark, I just stick to it. And I do a very loose outline. A very, very loose outline. Like, it will literally might not even have character names through it. I usually give people like titles. The first outline I did, I referred to them as the shaman, the youth, the soldier, and she was the assassin, but she became a different type of character. And that's how they were referred to throughout the whole outline, which was only, maybe half a legal pad. So I highly recommend outlines, even for small projects. If you want to do an anthology, outline just what you're looking for. Is it going to be a particular theme? Is it going to all take place in, what's your genre? Genre is what I was looking for. So I have ideas for like a fantasy anthology. So I've been collecting a list of old stories I wrote I want to rewrite, but they're all on a notebook. And you can even use an outline and a schedule for day-to-day life too. You don't have to rigidly schedule yourself, because I am the type of person who, if I fill out my calendar with do this at this time, I go nuts. I am very much a free spirit when it comes to that. It's like, go to the gym between 1 and 2. Nah. I don't feel like it. That's when I'm eating pizza. I need to eat the pizza before I have to go to the gym.
For sure.
But really, some kind of outline or scheduling is really, really good for helping with routine.
Outlines are amazing. Dan, how about you?
Counterpoint. Outlines are for the weak. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I was doing it right for the other 28 years.
No, I'm kidding. This is, for those of you who don't know, there's a pantser versus plotter
debate
joke on Twitter it goes on forever. No, I use outlines on an as-need basis. So I normally, when I start writing, I just write. I don't worry about anything else. Occasionally, if I get stuck, I will take a break from the writing and sort of do a rough outline. But essentially, it's really just, eventually going to be watered up into a ball and tossed in the waste paper or in the recycling basket, because that's just not how I write. The one thing I do is I have little notes in my phone. So a note which I'll be writing while I'm watching some vapid TV show. Whenever I get the idea, I just throw it in the notes. And the funny thing is, I almost never even refer to the notes, but the act of putting it in there, and I suppose if this were 20 years ago, I would be using a notebook. But I don't use any kind of outline or long-term organizational thing other than the brain, just because, and I'm only saying this because I'm sure there's some people out there that are like, oh no, outlines, I could never do that. I'm never going to be a writer. So everybody works differently, and I definitely am not about the outlines, but I totally respect all my plotter brothers. It's all good.
That's why my outlines are so loose, because it's literally, if anybody who does real outlines looked at my stuff, they'd be like, this is why do you even bother? It gets it out of my head. But I got no problem with just sitting down and writing too. You're right. It's whoever or whatever your particular style is. And that comes down to voice when you discover it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I always need to have world notes, some of those written down at least, and I need to have some character notes written out, but the actual plot, the outline, that's not always as necessary for me. So what I would like to share is actually I'm going to attempt to show it off. This
Oh.
lovely weekly
Ooh.
planning sheet that I print out, and I print them out in big batches, and it's from the Write Services. And what I love about this is that it has a section for a writing goal, an editing goal, visibility goals, and health and wellness goals.
Important things.
It also has a section in your daily thing here for daily water.
Wow, I haven't even heard about hydration yet today, so yes.
So this is an amazing thing. It's from the Write Services, and God, I forget her name, but the woman who created it did a presentation at a summit I attended a couple years ago, and this was a freebie, was this downloadable thing. So I've been using it for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now, and it's really effective. And the other thing I like about it is that it's not time-based, because like what Michael said, I hate having a schedule that's really regimented by hour. So what I like about this is that I can write out my whole list, and I can write them in the order that I would like, that I think I'm going to do them. But if it ends up happening a different way, it's not a big deal. There's no specific time assigned to anything. So it doesn't look weird if I complete something at a different time, or make me feel weird. And I don't feel pressured to be doing, this specific thing with this specific hour of my day, which is really not compatible with my ADHD brain. That would not work. So this is like the happy medium for me. It's holistic. It remembers that I'm more than just a writer, and with having those things on the page, it encourages me to remember that I'm more than just a writer.
We are all anxious cucumbers.
Yes, exactly. It reminds me that I am an anxious cucumber, and as a cucumber, I need water.
You do.
So that's really been a huge help for me. And I love it because it's not super regimented, but it does include all of the most important parts of being a human. Well, I guess there isn't anything on here for laundry, but like laundry doesn't matter for writers, really. We don't leave our houses, right?
Just wear the same pair of pants for 4 weeks. It doesn't matter.
I mean, in 2020.
Unless the cat pukes on them, then it becomes a
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
Okay. What is one either really good or really bad habit that you created or broke for yourself, and how did that affect your writing? Dan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I feel like we need to talk about social media, since it is
Please
an
do.
important part of our writing. So I'm kind of a Twitter beast. I just really enjoy the experience of there and interacting with people. So for me, Twitter has been fantastic. I mean, it's where I found my publisher. It's where I developed a lot of, world building stuff. But there have been times when I maybe spent a little too much time on Twitter at the expense of other things in my life. So setting aside, we talk about writing routines. We've talked about routines of when you actually write. We've talked about, exercise and health routines, but we got to talk about social media routines too, because you have to figure out, how much time should I really be spending a day on Twitter, on Instagram, or if you're Facebook or writers or whatever, because the answer is probably not going to be zero, because you need them. Like we all probably
Marketing
found this panel
tools.
through Twitter, and just making connections, etc. So stopping to think about when and how often and in what circumstances I use social media has been helpful. I won't say that I'm always perfect about it, but when there gets to that time when you're just kind of randomly scrolling, you have to say, okay, I'm not getting any benefit out of this right now. Let's do something else. So that's been helpful for me.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely could lose your entire life down the Twitter line if you stay on it all day. Michael?
you know, Dan, I knew you were familiar. We follow each other on Twitter. So I was like,
Yes.
it's like, your name is so familiar. I must
Yes.
follow you somewhere.
Yes.
But Dan makes a good point about social media, and so much of Twitter, social media in general, is just so toxic. It can kill your mood for the day if you go too far. I think that there's way too much that we as writers have to do to basically be what's the word I'm looking for? Professional. You need social media presence. You need websites. It's like, I just want to write stories and share them with people.
Why do I need all this other stuff?
I know. It takes up a lot of time. So social media, that's a good one, Dan. And I agree with him completely on that. But another thing that's really tough is just maintaining all the stuff that goes into creating your online presence in general. So that going back to the website, Dan, you also mentioned Instagram earlier. I've seen people talk about writing on Instagram. It's like, I don't understand how that works. My girlfriend has told me when I show her pictures of my food, I should make an Instagram for it, which I could do, but I tried to do that before, and then I immediately don't cook anymore. That's weird. The worst thing that I've done personally that I have to keep kind of getting myself back in the habit, though, is I will go on binges of watching or playing something, and it will cut into all of my other time. I spent most of 2019 completely away from video games and fiction reading and television completely. Then I rewarded myself with completing an old game and finishing up what was available for an anime online. Then I watched 5 more. But it's important to understand where the balance is. And it's very easy with one more episode or getting to the next level. Or if you're playing with friends online, I'm still fairly active in World of Warcraft, and I have friends on there. So
that's a dark hole of time sucking.
If I stop, I get itchy.
I have friends who I've lost for weeks.
Lives. Weeks. I'm on 15 years.
But she has faces.
Oh, okay. I do too, actually. I go and I check it out. But I have friends, so Discord starts lighting up. Hey, you're going to come and do something. So it's all a matter of learning that balance. And I keep using the word balance because that's key to how I do things.
Balance is very important.
In all things.
Always. Diana.
I don't know that I have a good answer for this. I feel like most of the habits that I, actively struggle with and dealing with are not really that directly related to writing. Trying to actually take care of myself like a human.
Well, I mean, talk about that then. That's still important to your writing.
They want me to eat 3 times a day. Do you hear
make food?
It's ridiculous. And I can't just, pull something out of a can like I do for my cats twice a day. Eating as a human is so much work.
Yes, but it's important because if you don't eat, you don't have fuel to write.
Caffeine.
That's why meal prep's been a lifesaver for me.
Oh yeah? You use something like HelloFresh or?
No, I just make something that I'll have available for a long period of time. I'll make a tray of eggplant parm, and I've got it for 3 months in the freezer.
I do that with lasagna. I'll do a lasagna and then it'll be there for a week.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem for me is that we have a tiny freezer. It's not good for you. I would have to pull out all of the stuff in my freezer to put away something that I would be keeping for 3 months. It's just not.
Space is a problem.
Yeah, space is a problem, and I don't want to give away half my closet to a deep freeze.
Fair.
So, yeah, I need that closet space for another litter box for when we get our next cat.
New kitty. Yay. Yeah,
that's important. Oh, I guess that's a habit that I can talk about. Cats.
Adopting kitties.
And regimenting the time that the cats are allowed to distract you from things. Okay, I have my designated afternoon cuddle break. And I have, designated playtime with my cats. And yes, sometimes they do distract me outside of that, but I try really hard to keep it within those designated times so that I don't just spend my whole day cuddling a cat, because I could, but writing is important too, and also apparently eating.
Yes, but it's important to make space for cat cuddling as well.
Yeah, and
petting animals is supposed to be really good for you,
well,
scientifically as
yeah,
well as normally.
and cats do need attention and love. You know, there are a lot of people who are like, yeah, just get a cat and you can just leave it alone. And to some extent, that's true. You know, if I go out of town for 3 days, my cat's not going to be nearly as upset as a dog would be. But like, they do need attention, they do need playtime, and they do need, I mean, not all cats like cuddles, but the cats that do like cuddles need to receive cuddles. And so it's important that I have that time in my day for both of us. You know, it's important that we have that time to connect, and that's important for both me and my cat. But it is also important to acknowledge that I need to pay the bills so that me and my cat can continue to eat and live and
And exist, yes, that's very
Yes.
important.
so that I can pay his vet bills whenever, you know.
Yeah, okay, we are almost at the end of our time, so let's close with everybody go around and say, if you could only give one piece of writing advice regarding healthy habits and writing to a person, what would that one thing be?
Take breaks.
Okay. And be okay with taking breaks.
Yes, take breaks and be okay with taking breaks. Get out of the capitalist lie that you need to be working all the time. Take breaks, be okay with taking breaks, because if you don't take breaks, A, you'll burn out, B, you might get a repetitive strain injury, and that sucks.
Ooh, yeah, carpal tunnel, not fun.
Do a whole other panel on that.
Oh God, yeah, we don't have time for that. Michael.
Don't worry about comparing yourself to others. You're not Tolkien, you're not Hemingway, you're you. And while you can draw inspiration from these figures, if you compare yourself to them, you'll never advance. You'll be stuck at best writing fan fiction. And that's a different topic altogether. But
Yes.
just remember, don't compare yourself to others. Work on developing your own voice and your own habits that help to build what you're looking for, whether it's a freelance career, published, self-published, or just for your own sake of art. You know, that's what it's really all about. It's about creative expression. So don't let somebody who's not even alive anymore define how your expression works.
Well said.
Yeah, it's really important to resonate with your art.
I'll close with one thing. All it takes is one sentence.
Just one sentence.
One sentence gets you started, and then you can go from there. And I have another panel in 3.5 minutes, so I got to go get ready for that. Thank you so much.
It was great meeting all of you. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank
Good to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.